of the last 2 months of the year. It's kind of crazy to think about that.
It would have to be.
For those of us that maybe didn't see the schedule, let me bring it up one more time for everybody so we know what class we're getting into today. We are in the Intro to Course Ethics Test Anxiety Day. It's going to be an awesome day for us to be here. How many of us in the room would say that they have not been in a class with me before?
So it's just like the great ones.
I have not.
All right. Awesome.
The emotion-based irrational.
Just going to follow that.
So
Hold on one sec. Not that I mind that people are unmuted, but I'm just going to mute everybody just to make sure that we're not getting interrupted. The best place to chat with me as we go through is through the chat itself. I appreciate those of you that's your first time. For those of you that I have met, good to see you. I see a few faces that I recognize. Pull that back. For those of you that it's my first time, hi. My name's Eric. I'm going to be taking us through the class today.
let's go to the
Today's going to be an awesome class for us to go through. I love Ethics Day. Right? I like going through life insurance probably just a little bit more than ethics, but I like Ethics Day a lot. Partly because those of us that are brand new end up being in classes with me. Partly because I find today to be one of the most beneficial classes for us to go through, because sometimes what I find is test anxiety is the biggest killer of all in these tests. For those of you that is your first class, I have two screens on my computer. I have one screen of what I'm going to share with you soon, which is this way when I'm looking this way. And then I have all of you over here. So unfortunately, I don't have my camera in the perfect spot where I can stare at you the entire time. So I have you guys on this side, which has everyone with their video on, and then I'll have what you see, which I'm going to pull up in my share screen right away. As I said before, the best place to talk with me as we go through is going to be the chat, partly because it's a little bit easier for everybody else to see your question or your comment, but also I have the chat up the entire time, so I will see it when it happens right away. And I also like the chat versus unmuting, partly because I might know what you're going to ask and I'm about to answer it. But if I'm not, then I'll answer your question right away. No problem. Okay? How many of us in the room have not passed the Canadian ethics course yet? The first course, 70% to pass, not open book exam. All right. Well, you're in the right place then. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. For those of you who maybe haven't passed it yet, that have not watched the video that I created of the explanation, this QR code is if you take your phone out, and you put your camera to it, it'll actually take you to a video of me doing a 20-minute explanation of that course. Now, it's going to be very similar to what I explained a little bit today, but a little bit different. So if you need a little bit of a refresher on that, or you haven't watched that video to do Canadian ethics, I would really, really recommend it. Not just because it's me, but that is part of it. I like it because it's me. But also, there's no mock exam for that test. There's no need-to-know videos. There's actually no thing other than the textbook itself. And so I got head office, WFG head office, as well as we got Oliver's, which is the provider of the course, to approve that video. So I'm kind of proud of that because I've never been able to get them to do that before. So what we're going to go through today is we're kind of going to go through these things. So we're going to go through an introduction on how to study the class, where to study the class, what order you should probably study the classes in. We're going to go through ethics. We're actually going to go through both. So there's two ethics courses. There's a Canadian ethics course, which is the one that is 70% to pass, closed book. The first test you need to take to get into the other four. And then there's a ethics and professional practice once you get into the main open book, 60% to pass. 4 exams. So we're actually going to talk about a little bit about both of those today, and then we're going to talk about test anxiety as we go through. I want to make sure I say this really clear, especially for those of you that are new. There are no dumb questions, just dumb jokes, and trust me, you don't want to hear them. They're not good. Those of us that have heard them, you know. Those of you that haven't, you can trust me. And the other thing about classes, because I like to have a little bit more fun, is I have sound effects in class. just because I like to have a little bit of fun
Austin.
as we go through. And I find that sound is super
Congratulations.
overused, so I use it ironically more than I use it seriously.
We have 18 new
Is everybody ready to get started?
guys. That's just fun.
All right, let's do it. And by the way, yes, I can see you the entire time. This is not one of the ones where I have two videos and I'm only talking to two of you. If you have your video on, I can see you. So if you have your video on, that is much better. So I can keep track of whether you're actually not just that you're paying attention, but then that we're going to be able to interact with me when I say, does that make sense? If you shake your head, I will see it. So let's get started. Are we going to go over the Canadian ethics? Yes, we are. Don't you worry. Before we do that, let's talk about where we should spend our time. Now, this course, I understand that for those of you that are doing this on a part-time schedule, that you have a full-time job or a part-time job. Which will go in pink, is doing study notes and need to know videos. Usually two different type of learners. There's learners, there's audio learners, there's which I'll talk about after. If visual learner, the study are probably going to be the most valuable thing outside of my classes, because I make visuals, but visual learners are the readers, the note takers, the study my note takers. Okay. The audio learners are kind of like me, where I like to watch the new videos in the course. Now, if you haven't done your Canadian ethics, you don't have access to these yet, but once you pass the Canadian ethics, it'll kind of open an example of what that looked like today. But the need to know videos are someone explaining them to you in little 15-minute videos, someone explaining. And then mock exams and chapter quizzes are a significant portion as well.
You know what? Okay. I can.
Mock exams are essentially a practice exam of the 20 or 30 questions of the exam.
Because what I
chapter quizzes are specific per chapter exams that are 10 questions.
I tricked y'all.
So ethics and professional practice has 4 chapters.
You need to have you registered for high impact by today.
1 per chapter.
I think
Life insurance, for example, has 11. So there's 11 chapter tests.
I'm excited.
I think chapter quizzes are bar none the best way for you to get a really good education.
It's going to be awesome.
Let me tell you why. Mock exams will kind of tell you how you're doing overall in a module, which isn't a bad thing. But chapter quizzes will help you target where you need to study. Because if I get 70s, 80s in chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then I get a 40 or 30% in chapter 6, where do I need to study? Chapter 6 is where I need to study. And so finding out where we got to spend our time, chapter quizzes are good for you. Is everybody okay on this so far?
10 times.
Now, for those of you that's the first time with me, no, not every class is very PowerPoint oriented. Today's just to keep me on track. Otherwise, I get sidetracked telling stories of my life. All right.
Okay.
Next. This is the schedule for this month. And the reason why I want to show this, which I know you guys have seen it, the reason I wanted to show it, especially for the new people, is as you can see, it's on a 2.5-week rotation. So ethics is today. It's also the 16th, which, by the way, they're the same class, but I don't know why one says Canadian and one just says regular ethics. I'm teaching both, in both. As you can see, tomorrow will be acts and sickness, the content, and then Tuesday will be acts and sickness, the mock exam. That means tomorrow I'm going to be explaining a kind of a boot camp style, everything you need to know about acts and sickness. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a mock exam with everybody on acts and sickness. Then segregated funds, then life insurance. And I'll say this, that's probably the order in the modules you should complete them in. Or at least that's what I recommend. Ethics, well, Canadian ethics first, then ethics and professional practice, because you're already doing ethics, finish that guy up. Then move to acts and sickness, then move to segregated funds, and then to life insurance last. And if I'm going to explain that a little bit deeper, this will kind of be where I do it. Here's the process of, in my opinion, the process of getting yourself to pass. Now, is this the only way to go through this course?
Bet
No,
on yourself.
this is. And your field trainer, your SMD, or someone else might tell you something different. I am not discounting their advice by any means.
This November,
but I would say this gives you the best percentage chance of passing every time.
Which makes me sad.
I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm saying I do kind of know what I'm talking about, or at least I think I do.
Party on the 10th of December.
First thing you need to do, surprise, surprise, is study.
Starting at 1, we have.
So that's coming to these classes, that's maybe watching YouTube videos, reading the study notes. That is going to be required of you. And that's most of, in my opinion, where the time gets used. The second one, and but like I said before, I like chapter quizzes a little bit more than mock exams. Okay, mock exams, I think if you can get 70 to 75% or higher on your practice-based mock exams, you are ready to attempt your certification-based exams in that module. Just so we make this really clear, you have 3 attempts in every certification module. Ethics, Accident, Sickness, Segs, and Life, and 3 on the Canadian Ethics. If you don't pass the first time, it's okay. If you don't pass the second time, it's kind of okay. And if you don't pass the third time, it's kind of not okay. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay? You get 3 attempts for free that are part of the course. You can use a 4th attempt that you have to pay for $20 for. Now, the problem with that 4th exam, and the reason why I try not to put people in a position for the 4th exam, is if we fail the 4th attempt at a certification exam on any module, we will have to rebuy the course. So it's okay to not pass the first time, like realistically it is, because I don't expect everybody to pass the first time. I don't. Then we just need to take it a little bit more serious each time. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for you to stress and freak yourself out. No, no, no. But I'm saying we take it a little bit more serious every time. Because the 4th one is like the big one, but the 3rd one is the big one if you don't want to pay. Second one's the big one if you don't want to use the 3rd one. You get what I'm saying. Okay. Now, if you don't pass, which is okay, you just go back to step 1 and work your way through to step 3 and maybe raise your standard up a little bit. Instead of getting 70, 75, I get 75, 80 now. Yeah, just make sure it's a little higher. And then when you do pass, you move on to the next module. So if you're done ethics, you move on to accident sickness. When you're done accident sickness, you move on to segs. And if you finish segs, you move on to life. But I will say this. If you're really struggling with a module, like segregated funds, for example, it is okay to move on to life insurance. It is not oh, I can only study one at a time, because the more you learn about all of it, the more you're going to help you with all the rest. And realistically, sometimes we just have a mental block about that subject. And if we switch gears, refresh ourselves in a different area, sometimes it just makes it a little bit easier. So don't ever feel bad straying from the order. The only reason why I put it in that order, and I'll be upfront, is because life insurance is harder if you skip to it too early. Let me explain what I mean. Ethics and professional practice is a little bit about learning the language of life insurance. I was a liquor store manager. I didn't understand anything about finance, honestly. So I had to learn everything. I didn't know what a beneficiary or any of that stuff was. When I moved into accident sickness, I learned a little bit about insurance.
Yeah, exactly.
Health insurance, critical illness, disability. I learned when you can deliver them, when you can't. What's a beneficiary? How much? What is a premium, a rider? Don't get lost if you don't know what all those words mean. That's why that module is there, so you can learn it when you get there. No worries. Then segregated funds is the investment module. So in accident sickness, I learned a little bit about insurance. Segregated funds, I learned a little bit about investments. Life insurance has investments and insurance combined. They have 2 products, whole life and universal life, and they have insurance and investments combined. And so if we don't really understand insurance, or we don't really understand investments, and trying to slap them all together at the same time, hard. But if we've at least studied some in the areas of the other 2, it ends up being significantly easier. Does this make sense? Kind of like going to learn how to swim, right? If I've only been in the baby pool, and then I go jump in the deep end, I don't know how to tread water, hold my breath, any of those things. What's going to happen? well, I'm going to feel like I'm drowning. And that's kind of how people feel when they jump too early to life insurance. Joanne asked, what order do you recommend modules? Accident, sickness, segs, and then life. Yes, but ethics would be before that. Ethics, accident, sickness, segs, life. Yeah. But like I said, not in stone, just recommended. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's have a little bit of a conceptual conversation. Okay? Not every day is going to be a good day in studying. Not every day is going to be a good day when you take your test. There are going to be good days, but there's going to be days that aren't so good, or you're not going to get the mark you hoped for or wanted. And what I want to recommend everybody is I want you to remember this on days. Now, if you want to share why you want to get licensed, feel free to put it in the chat, but I'll tell you mine. I was working at the liquor store evenings, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., right? When do people usually go buy liquor? Evenings, weekends, holidays, usually. So when do you think I worked? Evenings, weekends, holidays. When did my family want to see me? Evenings, weekends, holidays. When did my friends want to hang out? Evenings, weekends, holidays. When could I go on a date to get a girlfriend? Evenings, weekends, and holidays, right? This is what I was thinking of. These are things that I wanted to know. So I had to get out of it. I'll say this. All of my friends drank a lot when you work at the place they buy the booze at. And honestly, I felt like I went from, contributing to society to not contributing. Because the people I really got to know well, I saw every day. And then it started to dawn on me that every day they buy a 6-pack of beer or they buy a small bottle of vodka every day. And I would be not shocked if they didn't just come to my store. They went to other stores too. And then they'd stop coming. And I'd really hope that they stopped drinking, not drinking stopped them, if you get what I'm saying. And so I had to make a change, right? I actually got offered ownership of that liquor store I worked at. And it freaked me out. I was 21 years old and they're like, hey, do you want to buy into the store? And I was like, do I want to be committed to this store for the rest of my life? No. Right? Plus, I want to make more money and I want to be a business owner and I want to be a professional. I was sick of wearing liquor advertising t-shirts that had holes in them. Right? There's like all these things. And so when I had bad days and I didn't want to study and I had a bad day at work and I was like, man, I just don't want to study. It's late. I just had to remind myself of a couple of things. Because I'll say this. I used to eat so many Christmas meals cold. Because Christmas Eve was the busiest day of the year. And that's when my family had dinner. And so I got home hours after dinner and I'd eat it cold by myself. Or Thanksgiving. Or I could continue. And I was sick of it. So, on days it sucks and you don't want to do it, you just got to remind yourself why you got to do it. Some days. And why it's going to be worth it some days. Because some days it doesn't feel like it, but it's the consistent work that you got to put in. Does this make sense? I'll give you one more example of a real life thing that I still have to do now. Because I'm not perfect. I still go through the same stuff. I have 2 elderly dogs. They're both about 10. And they both have some pretty decent health problems. On the 1st of the month and the 10th of the month, I have to give one of them an injection. I have to do that. So today is also November 1st. So I woke up today reminding and remembering to myself that I had to go into my kitchen and get a needle and then grab my dog, who obviously didn't want to be jabbed with a needle, and do that. which does not sound fun. And trust me, it's not, because not every day are they okay with it. But I got to do it anyway, because I got to do it for them, don't I? So some days we got to do what we don't want to do because it's going to be worth it to do it anyway. Is this clear? And by the way, I am by no means perfection. I'm a work in progress like everybody else. And you'll realize that as you come to more of my classes. I am a work in progress. I'm just a normal guy, just trying to be better day by day. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's dive in now. Let's get into some stuff. Let's talk about the Canadian Ethics course. We're going to talk about that probably for the next 20 to 25 minutes. Then we're going to switch over to the other ethics. Then we're going to dive into probably actually doing some searching practice. So we can learn how to search in the textbook and what the textbook looks like and all of that stuff. But during the Canadian Ethics course, so this is the first exam, 70% to pass, non-open book exam. I kind of hate this exam in a little bit of a way because it's not open book and you have to get 9 out of 12 to pass. You have to almost get them all right. And I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm just being very transparent with you. Do you know the difference? I'm not trying to say this to freak you out. I think every single one of you can do it, but I don't want to set your expectations into a fantasy and then you end up not seeing the truth. So, these are the 5 main areas Canadian Ethics talks about. Competence, objectivity, disclosure, integrity, and confidentiality. And I'll go through each one of them. Competence is the idea of you knowing what you're talking about and being able to educate somebody else on what you're talking about. So being able to communicate with the client insurance company, keeping records, and educating them well. How many attempts do you get on this exam? You get 3 attempts on the Canadian Ethics for free, and I think you have to pay $20 after that, just like the other ones. I signed up in May and didn't have to go pre-course, but I have to get moving on my course now. There you go. So Chelsea's lucky. She doesn't have to do the Canadian Ethics until the end. But still got to do it. So it's probably worth it to be here. All right. Objectivity is doing the same thing for everybody and putting the client's needs above everything else. Okay. Objectivity also is about treating everybody the same, not treating anybody different for anything that they're different about, if you get what I'm saying. No prejudices here. Okay. Disclosure is the idea of transparency. We work with the insurance companies and we work with our clients. So essentially the way that this works is we explain the products that we work with to the client and the client says, yes, I want that. And so we set them up with the insurance company that we work with. That is proper. Okay. Awesome, Ozzy. Good for you. You can ignore me for the next 20 minutes if you really want. Okay. So essentially the idea of transparency is anything that changes on one side needs to be explained to the other side. Let me say it in a different way. Transparency or disclosure here is about if something changes with the client, we tell the insurance company. Something changes at the insurance company, we tell the client. And we do not filter it as it goes through. Let me say it in a different way. We can change the wording so we can explain it to the client so they understand, but we can't like make it sound better or worse than it is. Does this make sense? So if the client's health changes, we got to tell the insurance company. If the insurance is going to cost more, we got to tell the client. Transparency. And for those of you that may not know what transparency means, it's like a piece of glass. It looks exactly the same through it as without it. Clear? All right. Integrity is doing the right thing. Selling based on the merit of the product, not the commissions we get, and making sure that we're saying correct, accurate, honest statements. And then confidentiality is making sure that we keep our clients' needs, information, and otherwise confidential. Okay? That's the short form. Is everybody good on those 5? Hey, my non-video friends, bottom right, you can hit reactions. You can still give me a thumbs up. because I appreciate all you being there too. Perfect. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, in the next little bit, you might say, Eric, you're going to go over it for 25 minutes. Are we done already? No. I wish. Unfortunately, I'm going to go through each one of these topics and I'm going to tell you what not to do. And the reason why I'm doing this is because on this test, they're not going to frame questions in a sense of what should you do. They're going to usually say, what did this person do wrong? Or what did they not do? They're going to be very negative in how they build the questions. Okay. And just so we're clear, I literally bought this exam so I could do it 3 times to be able to explain it to you. So I've done the test. I know what questions they ask, but I can't tell you exactly what they're asking, but I'm going to try my best without getting all of us in trouble. Okay? Here we go. Competence. We need to avoid doing these things. These things are bad. Giving non-official confirmation of coverage. This would essentially mean a client gets approved by the insurance company and I call them and say, hey, you're all approved. You're ready to go. You're able to die and get paid, which isn't necessarily true because even if they get approved, you have to deliver it to the client. It's got to be paid for. There's a couple other boxes you got to check before it's official, legally binding. The second thing is we're not allowed to change the date of the insurance, right? If it got approved today, I can't change it to November 5th so they don't have to pay until November 5th. Yeah, whatever it is, it's got to stay that. We're not allowed to sell inappropriate insurance, which is saying doing the wrong thing for the client. We're not allowed to use any insurance premiums the client pays to us for anything else other than the insurance. Let me say it in a way. If a client gives you a check for the premium, that doesn't mean you cash it and use it for your party this weekend and then pay it back on Monday. Money goes to you, money goes to the insurance company. Now, for some of you might be like, obviously, but like, I'm just saying there's questions sometimes. And then we're not allowed to accept ratings without the client's consent. And what a rating is, for those of us that may not know, is when the insurance company says, yes, we'll cover that person, but they got to pay more than everybody else because they're higher risk due to what they do, their health, whatever it ends up being. We can't just say yes. Transparency. Insurance company says it's going to cost more. We explain it to the client. The client says yes. Then we tell the insurance company yes. We can't just say yes for them. Hopefully that makes sense. The next one, objectivity. Like I said, everybody's got to get treated the same. Here we go. We are not allowed to put our commissions in front of our clients' needs ever. Let me say it in a very firm way. I think this bullet point should be on everybody's board. Let me tell you why. It is really easy to be selfish. And, no, I shouldn't say that. I'll say it anyway. If I find out that you're getting paid higher commissions over doing the client's goals, I have no problem taking you to the regulators. And I'll say that in like a very honest way. If you did that for my parents, I would burn the world to the ground for you to take you down with me. And I'm not saying that in a way of like, oh God, I need to make sure I do it. But I'm saying like, I hope you never think about your commissions until after you help the family. And I'll say this, and I train people, I recruit people, I help clients, I do it all. I will never calculate how much money I get paid until the client signs on the dotted line because it's the best thing for them to do first. Let me make that really clear. If you went to court and they said, why'd you get this product? Your commissions should not be on that list, ever. Is everyone getting what I'm saying? Okay. I can calm down now. I'm not upset with you. I'm just trying to be firm because that is the last thing that anyone should ever get in trouble for in our industry. Because we get paid pretty good already for what we do. Okay, let's keep going. You're not allowed to miss any paperwork. Sorry, I just got intense there for a while. I'm not meaning to be upset with you. let me just get this off my chest. My parents have been taken advantage of by the financial world, and I will not do that to anybody else's family. Let me just throw that out there. For those of you that have been in seg funds with me, you know what I mean. All right, we got to do all the paperwork properly. We're not allowed to sell inappropriate insurance. I said that twice already. We're not allowed to misrepresent for or against the client. Transparency. We're not allowed to say, well, we go to the client, how much do you drink every week? And they say, I drink 7 beer every week. And that you can't say, well, that sounds like 3. And that's what you tell the insurance company. That's not okay. But on the other standpoint, you're not allowed to misrepresent for the insurance company to get the client to buy something they shouldn't either. We're not allowed to avoid talking about fees. We need to be upfront that we get paid, and we have to be upfront that when premium changes, we explain it. Can you tell of saying a couple things twice? Like it's weird. It's like they show up on the test. And we're not allowed to omit that you're licensed. If you're licensed, you need to tell them. Let me tell you what I mean in that way. If you're licensed and you're talking to someone about getting started with us or explaining financial products, it's a good idea to tell them that you're licensed, not only because it's good credibility, but because if you're not licensed, they should also know. Because I'll say this because most of us are unlicensed in the room, because I just want to be clear. If you're unlicensed, on a legal standpoint, you're not allowed to explain any financial products yet. Or you should tell them so they don't take you as if you're a professional in that point. Because if they act upon what you said and you're not licensed, there's no like catch for you. They sue you personally if anything were to happen. And like I said, we're getting kind of negative because that's what this module is about, okay? Not upset with you. Just have to kind of tell you where the lines are so you know in the test. Okay. Integrity. Let's just do the right thing, but we got to talk about integrity anyway. We're not allowed to discredit other companies, whether it's warranted or not. I would recommend you not do it. Let me tell you why. If I sit down with a client and I say, so where are you banking right now? And they tell me they're banking with Scotiabank, and I start going on a tirade of Scotiabank. Scotiabank does this. They laid off 2,700 employees, whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. And then I ask them, well, why are you banking with Scotiabank? Not only one, am I making them feel kind of dumb for being with Scotiabank, but what happens when they say, well, the reason why I'm banking with Scotiabank is because my son works there. Well, you took your foot and you shoved it at least size 9 in mine down my throat with it. How do you get yourself out of that? Well, you kind of don't.
Yeah, they call you.
Because you just like insulted their child.
You're kind of in a bit of a
or their
tricky
cousin,
situation.
or their mother,
Just
or their
on a whim, make it a
friend
you
that they really like.
want to buy a.
Got to be careful. Plus, I'll say this. Sometimes people don't want to work with someone that's just negative and ragging on other people. And I had a time in my life I was a pretty negative guy. And I have a good friend of mine. He's a really good friend, one of my best friends. But he's just negative all the time. And I just don't really like spending time with him as much as I used to. Because that's just not me anymore. We're not allowed to make false and misleading statements. We're not allowed to lie to our clients. We're not allowed to say we're licensed when we're not. We're not allowed to submit paperwork done by an unlicensed agent. That's why you have field trainers that come with you on meetings, because they need to do the paperwork. Because you can't. We're not allowed to use premiums for personal use. I mentioned that already. And the one thing that I've seen in the question is they say that we explain mutual funds.
Yeah, that's wild. So I gotta.
Let me put it this way. Mutual funds have a different license than what we do, which is segregated funds. So we're not really allowed to explain mutual funds because we're not licensed to sell mutual funds. Let me go one stage further on that. We're not allowed to recommend mortgage rates because we're not mortgage licensed. We're not allowed to tell people what to do with their houses because we're not real estate agents. We stay in our insurance lane and we refer out the areas that we are not licensed in. And that's what they want you to say in both ethics tests. Does that make sense? All right. Last one. Confidentiality. We're not allowed to use actual client information for examples. I can't take Carrie's insurance plan and show it to Jesse and be like, this is what I did with my other client. That's a breach of privacy. That's not okay. Can I take Carrie's and change it and be like, Mr. and Mrs. Client, and then show them the numbers? Sure, but I can't use her specific example with her name on it. We're not allowed to share clients' information without giving them permission, right? I explained my own parents' plan sometimes, but I asked them and they said yes. So they're okay with that. We're not allowed to keep info in an unsecured place. Let me explain the unsecured place, and I'll get to Dennis's question in a second. An unsecured place is anywhere other than in an office in a locked cabinet. Let me say it this way. If I'm going camping this weekend and I decide to put paperwork in the trunk that my client just signed because I'm not going to be in the office until Monday, that is not okay. You need to take it to the office, put it in a locked cabinet, and then go camping. If you're going to put it in a cabinet in your house, it needs to be locked and not available to the public. Better yet, take it to your office and put it in a locked cabinet. And then if the client didn't give you permission, you should not share it with anybody else. And yes, not in a car, like Carrie said. It's almost like that would be a question in it. Just kidding. Kind of. If they don't tell you you can share it, you can't. Is a good way to think about it. Now, Dennis brought up a good thing. Eric, do we miss disclosure? We did miss disclosure, because you know what disclosure is? Transparency. That's all I would say. So avoid not explaining something the exact same way the other side explained it to you. Just always be honest the whole way through to both. That's the only thing about disclosure I want to explain. That's why I don't have a checkbox with it. Good catch. Is everybody okay so far? All right, one more thing with this guy. So say I have a lock on my glove box, would that be fine? No. The answer would be no. Because someone could break in and get it. Let me also say it this way. There's a reason why everybody should have a password on their computer once they're licensed, because if you're keeping client information on your computer, you should have a password on it. And if they asked you, if they get the password wrong enough times, it should wipe your computer. Because I've known people, unfortunately, that have had their computer stolen with clients' information on it. That is not good, because you have to call every client that had information on it and explain it to them, and then change all of your passwords and everything. It's not fun. Not to mention the regulators creeping in to try and get on your case. All right. Last thing about Canadian ethics we're going to go through is the ethical decision-making process. I just find this part really funny. They assume that we don't have our own ethical decision-making process, so they give us one in case you don't have one for yourself. So here it is. And we're going to use getting a client insurance through this process. The first thing you do is you identify the issue. You don't have insurance, you should get insurance. Okay, there's an issue. We gather all the facts. How much insurance do you have? How much insurance do you need? How much can you afford? All of these questions. We determine some options and we evaluate. Now, there's a lot of approaches in the determine options section that you could look up. The rights approach, the common good approach, the utilitarian approach. There's a few. Essentially, utilitarians like doing the same for everybody. The common good is doing the most common good. The rights approach are don't encroach on other people's rights. Normal things that you would normally think of. Then once we have a few options, like couple term options, couple permanent options, we test them to see which one's the best. Now there's these 3 test options. I just like them because they make me smile. There's the smell test, which means if it doesn't smell right, it's probably not right. And I would also say this, when you're taking every other test in this course, whether any module, if the answer doesn't smell right, don't pick it, because it's probably not if your gut says no. The front page test, which makes me laugh more than anything else, if they put it on the front page of the newspaper, would you be proud of it? I quite literally last weekend went to a haunted house in Edmonton, which is where I live, and it was in the Edmonton Sun building, an abandoned newspaper building. Because who buys newspapers right now? Okay, if they put it on the front page of Google, would you be proud of it? That's what I think. Okay. And then the mom test. If you did it for your mom, would you be proud of it? And I think the mom test is probably the one that gets me the most fired up, because everybody you sit down with is either someone's mom, dad, or child. So you should probably treat them like that too. Because somebody they care about might be looking at that later and trying to say, why did you do that? And then the last step is you do it. You choose the best option. And then you remain objective. You do the same thing for everybody. And the last thing that I didn't list here is you reevaluate to make sure you're making the right decision. Because sometimes you make the right decision. Sometimes maybe you don't. But you change. And you do the best thing every time. Right? I'm not going to say I've made all perfect decisions through my entire career, but I've been pretty good. But I've changed the ones that I wasn't super proud of. Right? Is everybody okay with the ethical decision making? Okay. We are going to close the door on the Canadian ethics module. That's all the Canadian ethics module went through. We're going to close that door. You might be saying, Eric, that doesn't seem like enough. I know, but that's because I gave it to you short form. So hopefully you can take all that info, go take the test, and pass so you can get to the good stuff. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Why don't you teach ethics and professional practice content? So I have some people say, Eric, why is there not an ethics and professional practice content day in my classes? Okay, here's the main reasons. Once you get through the Canadian ethics exam, the ethics and professional practice is 20 questions, 75 minutes, and it's an open book exam. So once you pass your Canadian ethics, everything after that is open book. Let me say it again. After you pass your Canadian ethics exam, which is closed book, everything after is open book. Practice tests, open book. Chapter quizzes, open book. Certification official exams, open book. Provincial exams, open book. And they're all 60% to pass. So the mark goes down to 60 to pass, and the book becomes searchable. So things get a little bit easier in ethics and professional practice. If you're good at searching, that will really help. And these are the kind of 5 areas in core ethics that I'd say most of us are okay with already. Acting in good faith, doing the right thing, managing conflicts, right? If a client calls me and says, I want to cancel my insurance, I don't go, don't be stupid. That's not nice. They don't like that. That's not how to manage conflicts properly. We're not allowed to do unfair practices. We have to act timely and fairly. And we got to act within the rules. But you might be saying, what are the rules? Well, that's good to search. And we will do some search practice today. Don't you worry. But sometimes I have people come in the class and they say, Eric, I already am ethical. So why do I need to study this stuff? Right? Anybody feel that way sometimes? I'm ethical already. Perfect. Everybody's ethical to themselves. Everybody's a good driver to them. Well, not everybody. Most people think they're good drivers, but I'd say most people think everybody else isn't. That doesn't make any sense. How can you be the only good driver when everybody else is bad, but then they think they're good and they think, I don't know. It's anyway. I feel the same way. It's like a human condition. Anyway, I want to explain why ethics is kind of important through an example. I'm going to give you an example of a situation, and I'm going to give you 4 options. And I want you to tell me which one is the most ethical thing for you to do. Is everybody ready? Okay. I went to a public pool, and I'm getting changed, and I look over, and there's a locker with a wallet in it. Someone forgot their wallet. And I want to get it back to them. And I can do one of 4 things. Ready? The first is I can take it to the front desk of the pool and say, hey, here's a wallet. Can you get this back to the person? The second option is I can, well, for some reason their phone number's in there. I call them and I go meet with them to give it back face to face. The third is I mail it to them. And the fourth option is I do nothing. What is the most ethical thing for you to do in that example? And don't just jump on the bandwagon or be like Chelsea and do nothing. Just kidding, Chelsea. But like, pick whichever one you think's the best. And you don't need to do what everybody else does. Pick whatever is true for you. A lot of people say number 1. Some people say number 2. Okay. Front desk option. All right. All right. What if I told you that it's kind of a trick question and they're all wrong? You'd be probably thinking, well, what do you mean? Well, hey, trying to get it back to them is you're trying to do the right thing. All of those things, you're kind of trying to do the right thing, other than number 4, which nobody picked. Right? But there's an ethical problem with all of them. Let me tell you what I mean. The first one is going and taking it to the front desk for the people that work at the shop. That's a good thing, I would say. But then the fact of whether they're getting that back or not is up to the ethics of the person working there. Now, which, if you've ever been to a public pool like I have, usually they're teenagers at the front desk, or at least younger-ish people. Not that saying when you're young you're unethical, but they could just pocket the money and throw the wallet away, and you'd never know. The second option, number 2, let me throw the concern here. If I asked my girlfriend, Jenny, would you call some random person's phone number in a wallet and go meet them in some random place in Edmonton to return it? What do you think she would say? Heck no, is what she would say. Unfortunately, the likelihood of that being a trap is probably pretty small, but never 0. They could do that to try and kidnap you or mug you or something, depending on what area you're in. So there's an ethical problem there. And then the third one, phoning them, kind of plays into number 2. Is it ethical for you to open up their wallet and find their address to mail back to them? Is it ethical to open up the wallet to call them, to hook up with them? Potentially no. Right? Now, if I gave you a 5th option, which I took this option out, I used to always say, I would tell the person at the front of the pool, give them my phone number to call if the person came. I'd drop it off at the police station, and if there was a phone number to call, I would call them and tell them to pick it up from the police station. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up kind of plays into this number 3 in this example, okay? I always answer the one that seems like too much, because you can never be too ethical. Like if I went extreme and I was like, you know what? I would open up the wallet, I'd count how much cash is in it, I'd give it to the people at the pool, I'd give them the phone number to call, and then I would take it down the RCMP, give it to them, call in, then I'd wait until the person showed up to make sure the RCMP person didn't take any money out of it. That'd be like way too much. Yes? But that's the answer I'd pick in this question if they gave it to me. Because that'd be the most ethical thing for you to do. So sometimes the answer that's right is the one that almost seems like too much. Why? Because everybody's got to live up to a standard. Everybody's got to do the same thing. Because I'll tell you this, regardless of which option you chose, everybody should pick the exact same one in the test for it to be correct. If you have varying where you want to be, you all can't be right. Right? If Rhonda says I'm low risk, Amanda says she's high risk, and Ricky says he's medium, you all can't be right if you pick what you would do. Do you get what I'm saying? So I always pick the golden standard, the highest standard in any of those questions. That's the best way of getting them right. The other tips here, familiarize yourself with the search option, which we're going to do today, and watch the need to know videos, which I've mentioned before, a video, someone else explaining it. We got 3 more things we're going to go through here. I said ethics about learning the language of the course. That is true, because there is certain words in here that you may not know yet, and that's totally okay. I'll say what I say in all of my classes. I don't care how much you know when you show up. I just care you know more when you leave, every time. This is why I don't feel bad at all by whatever answer people picked, because I didn't give you the best answer, regardless. These 3 terms are going to show up in every module a lot, and I want to make sure I explain them now. The beneficiary is the person who receives the money when a life insurance policy or something gets claimed. So my family member, when I pass away, my girlfriend Jenny, she's my beneficiary. She gets the money when I die. What a claim is someone going to the insurance company to claim part of the benefits, whether that be her going to her going to life insurance saying, my boyfriend passed away, I'm the beneficiary. Or when you go to the dentist and you give them that pay direct card and you say, here's my insurance, that's technically a claim to your health benefits because you're claiming some of the benefit of that insurance. That's also considered a claim. And then insured ED versus insurer ER, I found these confused me way too much for way too long. So we're going to clear it up now. I want you to take the word insure and I want you to put the word cover in instead. Covered or insured with the ED is the person that is covered on the insurance policy. So in that example of me and my girlfriend, I am the insured because my life is covered on the life insurance. The insurer is the coverer, the insurance company. They cover my life. So insured ED is the covered person, the covered life, and the insurer ER is always the insurance company. Like Manulife. Insured is the human that has the insurance per se, and the insurer is the insurance company. Always. Is everybody clear on those two? Okay, good. And then I always search the governing bodies, which means like CISRO, CCIR, FinTrack, OAS, CPP, EI. I could continue. I always search them because having to memorize all of them is hard. And sometimes they blur into each other. Not just because we're memorizing them, but sometimes they both do the same thing. And so looking them up is a good thing every time. And then match them to the question. Has everybody got these other three down? How about you, my non-video friends? I'm not ignoring you. I just can't see you. All right. Just checking. I didn't get the first three. There you go. No problem. Now, on that note, I feel like I've gotten pretty deep into like content, do this, don't do this, don't do this. I'm a nice guy in general. So I'm going to tell you two awful jokes for the bad jokes part. Is everybody ready for the two worst jokes I have in my arsenal? Are you ready? How many of us have not heard the two worst jokes in my arsenal yet? Yeah, okay. How many have? It's okay. I'll say this. When you get sick of my jokes, it means that you just need to pass your exam and then you don't have to listen to my jokes anymore. Go get your license and you don't got to hear them anymore. Okay, here we go. What is not that heavy and blue? Light blue. Yeah. Okay. What's blue and smells like red paint? Blue paint. Yes. Okay, I'll tell you a good one. Okay, fine. I'll tell you a good one then. Polar bear goes into a bar. Walks up to the bartender and he's like, I'll have a beer. And the bartender's like, what's with the long pause? And he says, I was born with them. Yes, that's a good one. I'll cheer for myself. Don't need to cheer for myself anymore. Yeah. Okay. Is everybody re-energized? Some of you disappointed? Perfect. Okay, good. That was rough. Hey, it's funny. I told my dad that joke. He told all his friends and took all the credit. That's the way it goes. I'll tell you guys a funny story. So I got this sweater and it was like really staticky. And so I went to go return it and then they gave me a new one free of charge. Yes, I love that one too. You think it's a joke, free of charge, not staticky anymore. You're welcome. It's bad when I have to explain it, but okay, let's keep going. Some of you looked at me like, sick of this already. Let's just keep going. Well, as you can probably tell, my girlfriend didn't pick me for my looks, so it had to be my humor, right? So, yes. Okay, let's keep going. Let's talk about how to search in the textbook. It's so bad. Okay. I'm disappointed in myself more than you can be ever disappointed in me and my jokes, so don't worry. All right. For those of you that didn't know, I had an older brother. He was 3 years older than me. There's nothing you can say to hurt my feelings more than he hurt them as a child. I'm not trying to garner sympathy. That's also kind of a joke. It's totally fine. All right. Let's talk about how to search in the textbook, everybody. I'm going to pull up my course, my Oliver's. Here we go. Can everybody see that? See this example guy on the right side? Yeah. This looks a little bit different than the one you guys use. You use HLQP.com. Looks like this with this gentleman with his nondescript phone and his nondescript coffee, which I'm going to say is a peppermint mocha because it's November. And essentially, once you log in, especially for those of you who maybe haven't passed your Canadian ethics exam, once you do, the chapters you get into will look similar to this. These are the modules: ethics, life insurance. Mine looks a little bit different in the sense where I have the Quebec ones and the English ones. So I have ones in French and English, but I'm only going to focus on the English ones. Okay. To search in the textbook, this is how you do it in the commands on the left side, and I'll show you how to do it. So if I click the textbook on ethics and professional practice, usually they come up with this weird bar on the left side. I don't like this bar on the left side. I click on this little menu in the top left, which I call the hamburger menu because it's kind of like bun, meat, bun. Click on the hamburger menu, it goes away. But I got to bring up a search bar so I can keyword search here. Now, when I say keyword search for everybody, these are words you're searching to see if they're in the textbook. There is not any Google searching here. There's no "what is ethics?" question mark. No. If you want to find out what something is, you put just that word in. But if we're going to bring up the search bar, I press Control and F on my Windows computer, which I'll show you. I'll do it with you. Control F is in find, and the little white bar shows up at the top. That's my search bar. For those of you on an Apple computer, which it's totally okay to use an Apple computer, it's Command F, which is the key just to the left of your spacebar on your Apple computer. I will tackle the conversation here. You can take mock tests, chapter quizzes on an iPad, tablet, Chromebook, but you cannot take an official certification on those things. So when you're going to take the official exam, you need to have a Windows or an Apple laptop or computer that has a webcam and a microphone. So no iPads, no Chromebooks, no tablets, no phones, unfortunately. But during the studying process, you can use those. But I don't know how to get the search bar up on tablets. Okay? Now, we can search whatever we want in here. If I search ethics as an example, it will highlight ethics 221 times in this textbook, which is obviously a lot. And then I will use the arrows up or down to go to the next one or the previous one. So if I click the next one, it goes to the next time ethics shows up in the textbook, or back to the previous one. If you have a question, Kelly, the chat's probably going to be the best. But if you can't use the chat, feel free to unmute and ask if you need to.
It's just kind of a confusing question that I don't know how to word, I guess, best on the chat. So I just thought it'd be easier just to ask like this. Sure. So when we go to take the Canadian ethics, will that also be so I guess there's a few parts to this question. Will that also be with the camera and the microphone on? And you say that part is closed book, but this part is open book, but the camera and the microphone is on. Can you just explain what that looks like? Because I'm just trying to kind of understand what the testing process in itself looks like.
Sure. I will definitely get into that after we do some searching practice.
Okay, no problem.
Slides to show you exactly what the certs look like.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. No problem. Appreciate that question because you're probably not the only person that's wondering that process. So I appreciate that. Can you put more than one word? Yes. You can put more than one word. I could put in ethics and professional practice. You can put more words in, but the thing about keyword searches is it'll also narrow down the amount of hits you get. So I could put the word insurance in here, right? Or I could put the word life insurance in here, which will be less. But as you can see, there's too many. So we got to be specific about what we look for. Yeah. So on the note of what Kelly said, during the Canadian ethics, there is not going to be a textbook to search through, but in the ones after that, there will be a textbook to search through. But the process as far as video, audio, and computers needed are both going to be the same. But we'll show you what that looks like a little bit later. I have a few slides that'll show us, okay? The next thing I want to talk to you about is doing a split screen when you take practice tests. I think doing a split screen approach when you go through the test is the single best way to do practice exams. So I'll just zoom in the textbook a bit. So I'm on a Windows computer. This is how I do a split screen using the keys on my keyboard. The Windows icon on your keyboard is the one that has the 4 little squares in it, beside Control and Alt in the bottom left of your keyboard, or here, as you can see on mine. Okay, I'm going to open up a mock exam in ethics, which it's had a couple of questions done. That's okay. But we are going to use the same process to do a split screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this Canadian or this ethic and professional practice mock, and I'm going to click and hold the Windows key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to either press the left or the right arrow, whichever side I want it on. I want it on the right side of my screen, so I will press the right arrow key, and it should snap right to that half of the screen for me. And then it'll say, Eric, out of everything else you have open, which don't worry, you guys, video all look great, what do I want on the left side? I want my course. I want my textbook. So I'll click on that, swap to my textbook, and it'll be in the other half. Or if I show you, for those of us in an Apple computer, you can still do this as well. I'll explain that too. So on an Apple computer, it's a little bit different because where I have this dash, the square, and the X icons, you have in the top left a green bubble, a red bubble, and a yellow bubble. If you click and hold the green bubble, it will give you options like this. And I'll say, do you want it on the left half, do you want it on the right half, or do you want it full screen? Well, I want it on the left half, so I click the left half option, and it goes there to the left half of my screen. So I am textbook, test. Now, I know the test is pretty small, so we're going to zoom that in so everyone can read it. But this is how I do my practice exams and my textbook. Sorry, this is how I do my practice exams, my chapter quizzes, and otherwise. Okay? That's how I set them up. Does everyone make sense? Okay. This is how I set them up. Now what we're going to do, and what we're, oh, nice. Someone's writing on there. Thank you. Someone's testing out their, what do you call it? Touch screen. That's okay. I'll make it so you can't do that anymore. That's okay. So what we're going to do together, since we have a little bit of time, is we're going to do 3 questions together where you're going to tell me what to search. And I'm going to search it. And we're going to see if that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, and why to search. Can you do the split screen during your actual certifications? No, you can't, but I will show you after this what it looks like on the certifications. On the certifications, you either are looking at the test or the textbook. You cannot look at both at the same time. Here we go. Let's find a couple questions that we can do. Yeah, I wish you used to be able to do this, but they don't like that anymore. Because what people ended up doing, if I'm completely blunt and honest, is they would put the test on a separate screen and somebody else would do the test. So people would cheat, unfortunately. All right. I'm going to read through. Reagan owns an accidental death and dismemberment policy in the amount of $100,000 on his daughter Maria as the beneficiary. Reagan is hurt in a serious accident and as a result loses 2 of his limbs. Who receives the benefit from the accidental death and dismemberment policy? Now, I don't care if you know the answer or not. I want you to tell me what to search so I can find the answer in the textbook. And feel free to throw them out. And like always, there's no dumb suggestions. There's just dumb jokes that I've already said already. So we'll just talk about why some work and some don't.
We gotta look for the disbursement policy.
Dismemberment policy, that's a good one. A couple of people put dismember policy. Okay, accidental death. Beneficiary designation, those are all good. Any other ones? Someone's texting me saying they accidentally kicked everybody out of their Zoom meeting. And I'm like, I'm teaching my own class. Why are you texting me? All right. There's a couple things. Dismember policy, accidental death. Now, Amanda put dismember policy. I probably wouldn't put it like that in. Not that that's bad, but if I was going to put it in, I would write it in the same way as they put in the question. So I might not put dismember, not because I think that that's what you wanted, but I'm just saying everybody, because that'll come up with 0 because it's not word verbatim, right? You could put dismember or dismemberment, right? On the note of what Innocent said, you could put dismemberment policy. That might show up. But then you type it in and it says 0. So maybe I'm being a little bit too specific there, right? And so we can rake it back to dismemberment and it shows up with 15. Now, just so we're clear, there's not just one search to get you here. There's many. I'll give you the 3 criteria I search on in this test now, okay? Because we got a couple suggestions. The first thing I'll search is if there's anything in the question where I don't know what it is. Like if I don't know what accidental death and dismemberment policy is, I should look that up. 2, the second thing I look up is what are they talking about? Which in this example is accidental death and dismemberment. Or the third one is sometimes you can search things in the answers, but in this example, you cannot because they're people's names. So here's a cool thing that you can do during your practice exams. This is the table of contents on the left side. That's why there's a bunch of numbers on the sides. Okay. During your practice exams, the arrow will turn into a hand when you hover over something in the table of contents. That means you can click on it and it'll take you right to page 66. But I will say this, during your certification exams, you cannot click on the table of contents. So let me give you a tip. Use this number on the left and search that number instead. So instead of clicking, which I can do to get to page 66, as I just showed you, let's type in 2.6.3.1. 2.6.3.1. It'll either show up 1 to like 10 times, and you just got to click through till you get to it. So this is the first one. This is the second one because it's part of another one. I click on it one more time, and it took me right to where I need to be. That's how you do it in the certifications to get there. Okay. And then we can read up on this. Now, I want to make sure that I say this really clear for everybody. When you're reading the textbook during your test, during your mock exams, during your chapter quizzes, during your certs, excuse me, please don't read it to become an expert. Read it to answer this question and this question only. Let me explain why I'm saying that. There's 203 pages in ethics. You could take months to memorize every page. That's not what we're looking for here. We're searching to learn something to do with this question exactly. They're not asking, what is accidental death? Explain accidental death to me. How much money does it get? They're not asking any of those things. They're saying, who gets the money from the policy? So I'm going to read through this and figure out who gets the money. The insurance covers the risk of the insured person suffered from a defined physical loss or death due to an accident. The physical losses can include loss of limbs, hearing, or eyesight. Okay? So he said loss of limbs, so I know it's not no one, right? So I know that that one's okay. The insurance policy indicates the amount of the death benefit. The amounts payable for various levels of dismemberment or paralysis are often expressed as a percentage. Okay, that doesn't help me any. The definition of what constitutes an accident in the insurance policy can be very complex. There may be many restrictions and exclusions to coverage, situations in which the insurer will not pay. Does this matter with who's getting paid? No. So I'm going to keep going because I don't need to worry about this. As a result of this, processing a death claim can take some time. We're not worrying about death. We're talking about losing limbs, so I'm just going to keep reading. Since determining that death was accidental and not affected in exclusion, okay, accidental death insurance can be very helpful in providing at least a partial protection to people who are medically unable to receive. Okay. I'm looking for who gets paid. Personal accident sickness can provide hospitalization benefits and funds to cover some loss of income and out-of-pocket expenses after the accident. Did that tell me who's getting paid? No, not really. Now, if it's death, it's the beneficiary, as always, right? It would be the child if they died, but they didn't die. So the answer to the question, just so we're clear, is Reagan themselves. Because he lost some limbs, so he receives the money because he's alive. Oh, it tells you? Where? Okay.
At the top, the insurance covers the risk of the insured person that suffered from the loss of limbs, hearing, and eyesight.
Yeah, there you go. Depending how you read through it. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I just breezed right through that. Thank you. So, it's going to be Regan. But we found the place that we need with the answer in it. That's good. Or, if we can't find it, we just need to make the best decision we can. Because sometimes, I'll say this, reading the textbook is like reading the dictionary to learn English. All the words are there, but that doesn't mean it makes a lot of sense when you try and read it verbatim. I still don't know the whole pronunciation weird things in the dictionary. I still don't get it, but it's okay. So we're going to answer A. Let's keep going. Let's go to another question here. I'm just making sure we're not setting ourselves up for too much time. We'll probably do this one, and then we're going to move on to a couple different other subjects. Okay. Mary, a life insurance agent in Ontario, keeps her files on her computer. She was forgetful, so she taped her password to the keyboard of her computer. Is that okay? No. Mary kept her computer in an unlocked cabinet in her office. Bad. Her office was broken into, her computer was stolen, and her client data was compromised. With which legislation did Mary fail to comply? Well, you probably might know already, but what can we search to try and make sure? What can we search? Michonne said, hopefully I pronounced that right, says Pepita, is there an area that allows you to look up words you might not understand on the test? Unfortunately, the textbook's what you get. So the answer is unfortunately no. There's not like a dictionary to tell you the words. Michonne, thank you for making sure I pronounced it properly. All right. We could search if we go through the three things. Well, if I don't know what Pepita is, or confidentiality act, or privacy, or provincial, I could do those. 2, what are they talking about? Compromised data. I might even look in the word compromised because it's not in many other questions. Or I look through each one of these answers. I've been called Martian by substitute teachers. Wow. See, I'm lucky. I have like a very Anglophone name. And so most of the time mine doesn't get messed up. But people spell my name wrong all the time because they put a K in it, depending if they're French or Francophone or anything like that. But either way, we could search a few things, but I'll show you what happens. I'm going to put the word compromised in because it's in the textbook or it's in the question that doesn't show up very often. Now there's 0, but I want to show you something. If I take the D off compromised, there's still nothing. But if I keep going back, sometimes they show up. Now, this compass shows like 367, so we're not going to use that word. But I want to make sure that I say, if you get to the end of a word like that, and it's like ED, ES, ER, I want you to take a couple things off. Just to make sure that you're not missing it because it says ING instead of ED, or ER instead of ES. Do you get what I'm saying? Because English can be crazy that way. Just take a couple off and see if something shows up first. But let's search a couple of the answers. Let's go to Pepita because someone put that in first. Well, look, Privacy Act, Personal Information Protection Electronic Documents Act. Yeah. And we could click on this to get here, right? Which we're going to do that. By the way, the other ones are, there's some other ones down here too. This is why I say search them up, because there's so many acronyms in here you can do. So let's click on that. They're all on page 30. So I'm going to read them. I'm going to read Privacy Act first. In course of carrying out their business, life insurance agents have access to a great deal of personal information about their clients. How they handle the information is regulated by privacy legislation. The federal government has appointed a privacy commissioner to investigate complaints about breaches of privacy under federal jurisdiction and making these findings public. The commissioner has authority under 2 laws. The first is the Privacy Act, which is a federally legislated governing and how the federal government and its agencies handle personal information. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Sounds okay. Let's go to keep going. See, look how long Pepita is. I don't want to read all that. I want to know if this is what we're going for. So here we go. More important for insurance agent is the second privacy statute, the Personal Information Protection Electronic Documents Act. Where are we talking about electronic documents in this question? Heck yeah. So I like this one already. Which sets out ground rules for how businesses and other organizations may collect, use, or disclose personal information in the course of commercial activities. Pepita also controls how federally regulated businesses must act in handling employee personal information. Has they told me anything? Kind of, but not really. Most of this has been mush so far. If provinces have chosen to pass laws similar to Pepita, those laws take precedence in the province. The 3 provinces have passed out laws for privacy, and 3 others have adopted legislation protecting personal health information. Pepita ensures that only information that's needed and relevant to conduct business transactions should be collected. Once the information is over, the information should be disposed of. Okay. Provinces has also done privacy commissioners who mandate and connected to materials. That sounds kind of like what we're talking about, yes? But like, I can't say 100%, so maybe I'll start look at some of these other ones. So I'm going to search Confidentiality Act and see. Confidentiality. Okay, well, I put the word in, and there's no act at the end. Nothing. So I'm not confident in that one. Let's go to the last one. Provincial Insurance Act. Oh, I didn't spell it right, but I will. IAL. Provincial Insurance Act, 0. So guess what? That's my confidence level that that's the right answer too. It's not in the textbook. It's probably not right because right answers are in the textbook. So I'm still going to go with Pepita because that's what I'm feeling. Everybody okay? Did I still not spell it right? Oh. Provincial. Thank you. Oh, Provincial Insurance Act, 1. Let's read it. This section identifies main responsibilities of life insurance agents and how they're required to work within business contexts and adhere to the Provincial Insurance Acts and Codes of Conduct. So there's not just a Provincial Insurance Act by itself. Okay, well, I'm still not going to pick it. That didn't change my mind. So I'm going to go C. Is everybody okay? Now, Kelly asked a question. Will there be a recording of this sent out? Unfortunately, no. Now, here's the unfortunate part. One of the deals I made with Oliver's to be able to give me access to this platform and be able to teach live is that it has to be live. Unfortunately, I can't send recordings of my teachings because sometimes I've had people ask or request, and unfortunately, the answer is no. Now, I know that this is recorded right now, you would say. The reason it's recorded is so if anyone ever is dealing with a client and they say, Eric told me to do this, I can prove what I say in every meeting. Because as much as I want you to have a license, I don't want to put mine on the line for you to get yours. Does that make sense? Okay, appreciate that. Now, on that note, I'm gonna change what we're gonna go through. We're gonna go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Does everybody feel a little bit okay with searching now? How it works. This is how I do every mock exam and chapter quiz that I would do to make sure I have the textbook and the test. so I get familiar with using both. Okay. Would it make, on the same idea, would it make sense for us to always record our sessions with future clients? I would say, would it be good for you to record every meeting with your clients? I would say probably not. Now, if we're talking ethically, if you want to like close it up, be super tight, sure. But us taking client notes is more what they want from us. Notes of what we talked about, notes of what we went through. Because trying to record every phone call, every Zoom meeting, every in-person meeting might seem weird to your client, I would say. Okay, just throwing that out there. All right, let's go back. So we talked about the split screen guy. Now let's go through the certification example here. But before we do that, this is how you're going to get better at that, the searching. I've had a lot of practice. That's why I can search. But it just takes you practicing that every test to get familiar with it. Now, I get this feedback sometimes. Eric, I'm just not good with technology. I'm just not a tech person. Anyone feel this way? Okay. I'll tell you this. No child was born with an iPad in their hands. It takes practice, just like everything else. Now, I'm not trying to take away the excuse that you're not good at tech. You may not be, but I'm not good at changing the oil in my car or lifting heavy objects or all of these things. But guess what? I can learn it. It's just going to take time and effort, just like everything else. So that's why practice is even more worth it for you, because the more you practice it, the more comfortable you're going to feel. So when you get to the official test, you're not going to be freaking out about the tech and the test. Only the test, not the tech. Okay? You can't take a cert off a Chromebook. Correct. With Chromebooks, you cannot take the certification tests on them at this point. They keep telling me that it's in the works, but that's been 2 years in the making. So you just might have to borrow a computer from somebody else or go to your office to take the test, which realistically, you might have to go to your office anyway to take the test, depending where you live. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about certification exams now. This is what they look like. So now this is an anti-money laundering cert. I took it so I should take this picture for you. You're welcome. And no, I'm not in the same place. These are two different places. I just set up my backgrounds to look kind of close. Right? Just for the record, like this. Well, if my camera works, I was trying to show you the thing. Sometimes it shows like the board when I click a certain button, but I change things. Sometimes the camera needs to be on and they may need you to pan the room, show the room that you're in, okay? Usually 75 kilometers to the answer of how long do I need to be far away. Let me say this in a really clear, concise way, okay? Trust me when I tell you that you need to make sure that they can see you the entire time through your test. Oh, where is my thing going? I know it's not moving for you, but it was for me. This one says 40 questions. Your test is 20 questions for ethics, 30 questions for the rest. 40 is this one specifically. But the thing to mention is I have to have my camera on. I have to have it being able to listen to what I'm doing. So let me say it in a very clean and concise way. You should be in a room by yourself. Now, if there's children, pets, not a big deal. Adults need to leave. Now, that doesn't mean if they show up and they're like, hey, blah, 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 and you're like, get out, I'm in a test, that they're going to void your test. No. But they can't be there sitting with you, talking to you, helping you in a way, or debatably helping you. Okay? Do you have to go to the office to write? Depending how close you are to an office, yes. And I would talk to your field trainer to make sure whether you count for the exception right at home or not. I can't say for sure for everybody. Okay? With the exam, you can either look at the exam or the textbook, not both at the same time. It's like Google Chrome tabs, one or the other. And no, if you have two screens, you cannot look at one on each screen. They'll show the same thing during the test on both. If I click on the textbook tab, this is what it looks like. But I need to make sure I'm really hyper specific. If you don't click this this icon here, the search bar will not show like this. It will just be blank. Now, not blank like the textbook's gone, but this whole search bar will not be there unless you click that icon. And if I want to be a little excessive, just to be fun, because I like doing this, it's this one. If you don't see it, let me know. I'll change it to red for you so we make sure everyone can see it. Let me know when you got it. This one, this one, this one. Everybody good? Can you see it? All right. If you don't click that icon, you don't get to search. No clicky, no searchy. Clear? No clicky, no searchy. Okay, good. Because I always get this feedback. Eric, you said it's an open book test, but I couldn't search on my exam. Well, you didn't click the icon, so you don't get to search. The other thing is they have 3 options here. Highlight all, match case, whole words. Please don't use any of them. Let me tell you why. They will just confuse you because you don't have those options while you're practicing. Highlight all will show you all of your searches all at once. And it's confusing sometimes to see them one at a time, not to mention all of them at once. Match case means you need to have capitals where they have capitals and lowercase where they have lowercase. Otherwise, it will not show up. If you put a capital T where they don't have a capital T, it won't show up. So just don't touch that one, please. And then the last one, whole words. This is the only one that people could potentially tell me it's worth it. Okay? This will show a word by itself. So if you put bank in here, it will not show you bankrupt, bankruptcy. It'll just show you bank by itself as its own word. Now you could say, Eric, that could be pretty useful. Right. But I have a better way to do it. Just put a space after and a space before the word you put in. Now you might be saying, Eric, why is that better? Because sometimes if you turn on whole words and you forget to turn it off, your next search will find nothing. And you won't know why. Whereas if you put the spaces, then once you delete it, it'll be fine. And no, you cannot copy and paste. You'll have to type it in every time. Okay? So I don't recommend we use highlight all, match case, or whole words. I just say get used to doing it the same way every time so it'll work the same way every time. The other thing I will say, if I'm being completely transparent, searching on the certification exams is much slower than searching during mock exams. So for those of us that are going to rely on a lot of searching, it is going to take time. So searching should be a tool, not necessarily an every question thing. Let me say it in a different way. The calculator, which I'm going to show you next, is also a tool, but I don't use a calculator on every question, and neither should you. Okay? You shouldn't have to search on every question, but search on some. I found it took a few seconds to load the pages. I would say depending on your internet speed, it could take from seconds to up to a minute to load. I've had people say it took up to a minute, which is not great when you only have 75 minutes to write the test. Next, here's the calculator. Okay, the reason why I use the computer calculator when I go through stuff, which is this, the reason why I use this is because it's very close to their calculator. And how do I pull up the calculator on my computer? I literally just click the Windows button in the bottom left of my screen and type in the word calculator, and it shows up. Okay? It is a simple calculator that is only capable of simple calculations. So let me say this in a different way. Don't expect it to do graphing calculator things. And let me say it one more in a different way. You are not allowed to use your own. Or this. If you use your phone, kiss your test goodbye. They'll send you an email a couple days later saying, we know you passed, but you used your phone. Your test did not count. You need to do it over again. And nobody wants to get that email. So just don't. You cannot use your calculator, phone, or textbook notes. Correct. The only thing you're allowed to use is what they give you. Now, I've had some people use a blank sheet of paper on their table and not had a problem, but officially, you're not supposed to use one. But if you use one and they don't say anything, okay. But I can't say, go use a piece of paper, because that would be against what they tell me to tell you, if you understand what I'm saying. I've had people use it and not have a problem, but I can't officially say do it. Use a piece of paper that's blank on a piece of paper. I'm just pausing the recording so everyone gets it. If you use a blank sheet of paper, just make sure it's blank and you can write stuff on it, and it should be totally fine. But if they officially ask you, I told you not to. Clear? Okay, great. Just making sure. Okay. Glad we talked about the paper thing. Now, before we dive into the next bit, which is going to be the most fun part for me to talk about today, does anybody have any questions about the certification exam before we go to the next step? If you do, text in the chat. Just give me a second. I'm just going to take a sip of my coffee. I was told it's okay as long as you show both sides of the paper or the camera. I've had that work for some people, but I've been told no as well. No questions. All right. We are going to move on to my favorite part of the day. Will there be someone live watching us during the exams, or is it recorded? It is recorded, so they will watch it at a different time. The only time you may have someone live watching you take the test is if you get to the provincial exams and you're in a specific province, because not every province does them in person. Some do them digitally through a digital proctor watching you take the test. And no, I don't know what provinces do that, because every province is different, and by the time I tell you when you get there, it'll probably be different by the time you get there. I was told that certifications on modules you can write from home, but not in the provincials. Every province is different. Alberta, you have to do it in person. If you do it online, you have to pay more. You go to Red Deer, Grand Prairie, or Fort McMurray. In Ontario, you need to fly to Toronto, I guess, or do them online. Saskatchewan's online. Manitoba's online. BC, I have no idea. Northwest Territories, everything, I have no idea. So what I would recommend is not to worry about your provincials until you're done your certs, because before then, it doesn't matter yet. Like, what am I going to do when I'm so skinny that every woman finds me attractive? Well, I'm not skinny, and women don't find me attractive, so I don't need to worry about that problem yet, do I? Right? So this is kind of like, why are we worrying about the thing that isn't going to happen? Or no, let me say it a different way. It is going to happen for you. It's not going to happen for me that I get so skinny that all the women want me. It's fine. But I'm saying, worry about it when we get there, not before we get there. Are we clear? Okay. I get the like, Eric, I need to be mentally prepared for the provincials. No. Go be mentally prepared for the certs and go do those one first. Do women like skinny guys? I don't know. Some women do, some women don't. There's always somebody there for somebody else. Don't worry. And if you haven't found love yet, you will. And someone will like you just as you are. Okay, enough about that. Let's get to this. Beauty's in the eye beholder. That's true. Let me put it this way. Beauty is just kind of part of a state of mind. You know what's crazy? When you're confident in your body, it's weird. People just find that attractive, regardless of the shape or way your body is. It's just kind of how that works. People just like confident people. That's how that goes. All right, test anxiety. Let's talk about the thing that people don't think they have, but everybody does. And I always lose people during this conversation because people leave and they say, I don't have test anxiety. And I say, bull. Because everybody does. I took a test online about, do I have test anxiety? And I said yes to every question. And I honestly don't think I get that stressed during tests. But everybody has this. Now, I don't think test anxiety is really anxiety. And let me explain what I mean. I'm going to frame it right. I find test anxiety is we're scared of failing, we're worried about what mark we're going to get, And then we have stress in the idea of tests in general. Now, some people actually have legitimate anxiety where it's like debilitating. But I'd say for the majority of us, it is not that. It is a combination of I get stressed during tests, I'm worried about failing, and I'm kind of scared of not getting the mark I want. Combination of those three things. And I'll say this. You face fears every day. You deal with stress every day. And you worry every day, but you still live on every day. So we can deal with all three of these things. Okay? You are capable of handling your test anxiety. I have a friend of mine, same friend that I was talking about before. Love the guy. Don't spend a lot of time with him because he's negative, but I'll tell you this. I went to a family get-together for him. It was his dad's 70th birthday. I'm basically like his parents' third child, so of course I went. And the whole time I was at this 2.5-hour thing, all the people my age were talking about were trying to like one-up each other of why their life sucks more than the other person and why they have higher anxiety than the other person. And it sickened me to my core. Let me tell you why. They're making anxiety a pillar of their identity. They're so tied to having anxiety that they're almost scared of saying, I don't need it. And that reminds me, just like people having the pillar of, I drink alcohol, and it becomes a pillar of their identity. And then they're scared to lose that part of themselves because it's part of them. Like it was freaky because they were like, oh yeah, I get anxious about that stuff too. And the funniest part is, every single one of them talked about the being like, oh, there was just too many people. I just was freaking out. Oh yeah, there was just too many people. I was freaking out. Which, by the way, I also feel sometimes. But like, they were trying to. It was crazy. Anyway, on that note, I just want everyone to understand that you do not have to condemn yourself to feel this way forever. Let me give you an example. The best example I can give you. There is one thing that I am anxious about above all else in my life, significantly more than anything else that I get scared, worried, and stressed about. And I will tell you what it is, but I'm willing to let you guess what you think my biggest anxiety is. And if I've told you, don't put anything in the chat. But if I haven't told you, guess. What do you think I'm scared of most? And I don't take offense. Don't worry. Not reaching potential. That's a good one. Alcohol. Hey, that'd be a good one, Carrie. That'd be real if that was true. Yep. I don't drink nearly as much as I used to either. Just because of that. Anybody else? Marshawn put their stuff in. Don't worry, I'm not going to get offended, but just death, okay? Public speaking. Surprised no one's put like lighting yourself on fire, because apparently that's like the number one. I don't know. But yeah, I'd say Jesse and Iris got it. I am deathly afraid, worried, stressed about public speaking. And I just did it for the last hour and 40 minutes. And I do it 6 hours a week. And I did it 9 hours last weekend. And some of you might not even have any idea. Now, here's the thing. I'm not immune to feeling it. And it doesn't get any easier. But I get better every time. Let me tell you what I mean. How many of us actually logged on early today and was listening to the music I was playing with the poster up today? Yeah, for those of you that weren't, it was. I always turn on 50 minutes early. There's always music playing, and I put the poster up. You know why I do that? For me, not for you. I do that to calm Eric down, to put Eric in the right mindset to teach. Because you know what? My girlfriend even knows. I guess you guys don't realize. Look, she works right beside me all day. Our desks are right beside each other. And she knows about 10 to 15 minutes before my class, she needs to leave. Not because I tell her she needs to, but because I got to get in the right mind frame to teach you. And I'll tell you this, I don't get any less nervous, less stressed, less worried about it, but I do it anyway. And I make sure I take steps to put myself in the right mindset. Now, is it okay if I'm a little vulnerable with everybody in the room for a minute? Is that okay? All right. I have been teaching this class in some way, shape, or form since October 2019. It's been 4 years. I taught weekend boot camps. The first one I ever did, I got sat in a room with two of some big name people, Cameron Agnew and Greg Schranka, put me in a room, which are very successful gentlemen if you don't know them. And they said, Eric, we want you to teach the LQP to our agents. And I was like, no, why would anybody want to do that? No one wants to restudy this crap, right? That's what I said. And they kind of laughed. And like, but we think you'll do a good job. We want you to do it once. I was like, okay. So I basically restudied the course for like a week. And then I had 25 agents show up at my office in person to listen to me teach it for 9 hours on a weekend, 6 hours on a Saturday, 3 hours on a Sunday. And then they were going to write their tests right after my class. So basically, once the class was done, I set up little cubicles for everybody and they took their cert tests right then and there. And I don't like public speaking. And so guess what? Eric was not teaching very well that day. Those 2 days, I was nervous. I didn't know what I was saying, and I had to make the entire curriculum based on what Oliver's taught. And then it turned out that half of the tests that got taken got passed that day. So for every 2 tests that got taken, 1 got passed. And they were like, Eric, we want you to do it again. And I was like, okay. And then I did it again. And then slowly but surely COVID happened. Then we went to Zoom. And then boom, 3 years later, we're here. But I want to make sure that I say this. There was a day when I was teaching when someone I respected came into my class and started telling me that I was wrong on how I was teaching it. They were like, you should teach it this way. You picked the wrong question on the mock exam, which I did on purpose, which by the way, because you can't get everything right to learn anything. And then I have a voice just like everybody else's voice, that I have the voice that says, you're not good enough. You can't do it. You can't change. You are who the past makes you. And I grew up in a family where I was the quote unquote smart kid in my family. I was going to go to school, get good marks, all of these expectations. And so the marks I had in my tests was the value I kind of was as a child. Can anyone identify with that feeling? Yeah. And not that my parents didn't push me. They said I could be anyone I want, which is great. But I'll say one thing. No matter what my marks were, my parents always told me I needed to do better, which in some ways was really good. But in other ways, hurt. Because I remember, it's like a core memory. In grade 6, I came home after studying a ridiculous amount of time. And I got 98% on a test. And I was proud of myself because I did all the work. And I got home and guess what my mother told me? Well, only if you would have got that one more right. And it broke my spirit in that moment. Because I was like, so I did everything I could have possibly done and it still wasn't good enough. Now, I didn't internalize that until I was an adult, but that's how I felt. And the day that person that I respected came into my class and told me, Eric, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, hey, I made the whole curriculum. If everybody's doing well, guess what? It's all on me. But if everyone's not doing good or I'm doing something wrong, everything is also on me. And I'll tell you the truth. That day, I almost quit teaching. And I don't mind being honest. It took me over 2 full weeks to get over it. And I was teaching 3 times a week still. Getting excited. Woo! With people. But I wasn't feeling it. Fake it till you make it. But here's the thing. I just thought in the moment I didn't want to do it anymore because that voice got really loud that day. Eric, I knew you couldn't teach this as good as they would do on the thing. I knew that people wouldn't pass when they took your courses. You're still not good enough. Now, that voice isn't my mom's anymore, but it was for a long time. And the scary part about it is it's not even my own voice. And it's probably not even your own voice that tells you that. It's the cumulative, what we think everybody else is saying behind our backs about us. And it's not even our own voice. And then we got that little voice inside. It's like, but maybe I could. But maybe I can. But maybe. I'm just like everybody else. Now, I had to do some real serious stuff to get through that. A lot of me time. But here's the thing that I did. I went to people that I cared about and I asked their honest opinion. I went to people I respected and asked their honest opinion. And you know what happened? I just started to not care what that person said. And then I did the math. And it sounds really stupid when I say it out loud, but I looked at how many students came to the class, like how many agents came to the classes. And I had, at that point, taught over 5,000 people in my classes. And I was going to let one derail me. One negative comment. I was like, what am I doing? The percentage is like 0.000 something. And I was going to let that derail me? No. Because you know what? And it's going to sound really funny, and I want to make sure that everyone hears when I say this. Skeptical people are skeptical about everything. They're skeptical when you change to any new job. They're skeptical when you change anything. Why? Because they never change. Because they're too freaking scared. And when you change, they're scared. Because you show them that they could, but they don't. And you know what's hilarious? And I'll say this really firmly. The person that told those things to me, they tried to replicate me and teach their own people. And it didn't work. And it doesn't matter who it is. I still respect them to today. They were trying to help me do the right thing. I just took it so awful. But test anxiety or exam wipes me as soon as I get the exam. As soon as I finish all the responses, it returns. Right. Because Elizabeth, you let it get too high before you even start. I can be stressed to the nines when I get into class too. I could let it get to me right before I start. But here's the thing. You all do what I'm going to ask you to do. And it's shelf your emotions for a limited amount of time. You do it every day. It's not that I don't feel stressed, worried, fearful. I do every day. But I shelf it for 2 hours. And then after I'm done the test, I literally, after we're done the class, I turn off my webcam, I turn off my audio, and I'm like, whew, and then I feel all the feelings come right back. But it's done. And you do it all the time. If you have kids and you've had to shelf your emotion when the kid's screaming in the grocery store, guess what? You've already done it. You shelf how you feel for a limited amount of time, and then you do what you need to do, and then you feel it after and you go cry it out after. I don't care what you do after. But you are strong enough to shelf it for a limited amount of time. And that's all I do in this class. I'm going to finish, and then I'm going to walk out, and we're going to go have dinner, and Jenny's going to ask, hey, Eric, how's class? And I'm going to say, good. And that's about as descriptive as I get, because I'm sick of talking to people after 2 hours. It's just how it is. I'm a super introvert for people that don't know. If you call me and I know it's you, you got a 50% chance of me answering. And if I don't know you, it's less. And by less, I mean 0 chance of me answering the phone. Not because I don't care about you, but because I don't want to talk to you most of the time. I'm not saying you specifically, but you get what I mean. but I talk on here because I shelf it. Now, I'm going to teach you some things about what I do. But before we get into the conversation, the best thing you can do with test anxiety is to not get anxious before the test. Because if you start at an 8, you can only go 8 and up. But if you start at a 3, you go 3 and up, and there's more room for you to think clearly. Here we go. The first thing I do is I prepare that I'm going to feel the way I feel. I said this before. It doesn't get easier. I just get better. I do more prep work so I don't have to do the during work. I fuel up. I make sure that my blood sugar is even. Because when I don't eat, I'm just not the same person. When I'm hungry, I'm just not the same person. This coffee is not always a coffee. No, it's not whiskey, but sometimes it's tea. Sometimes it's water. And in December, it will have Baileys in it most of the time. Okay? I'm not saying drink before your test. Okay? Get some sleep. Now, you might be saying, Eric, before I take my test, I don't get much sleep. I know, but you're an adult. You can bank hours of sleep a couple days ahead. So maybe that's a good idea. The third thing is get there early. That means if you're doing your test at the office, get there early. If you're going to do it at home, sit and get your things set up early. Why? Because when you're stressing and getting in there, you're stressing before you get there, and it's only going to go up from there. You need time to decompress, just like I do. 15 minutes before I teach this class, I don't have the video on sometimes, but I'm sitting right here, calming myself down, listening to the music. And I remain positive. Now, this is not me saying don't be negative, be positive. This is you're going to have moments that don't seem fun during your test. But what I want you to remember, or let's say the worst thing you can tell yourself is, well, at least the next question can't be as crappy as this one. If that's all you can take from it, great. And if you come to my mock exam classes, you'll learn I'm going to tell you to defer all the hard questions to later because I want you to stay calm as long as you possibly can. Because when you're calm, you're clear. When you're stressed, you're not. How many of us have ever been on a trip where you're stressed around packing your bags, and then once you get in the plane or in the car for an hour, you're like, oh, I forgot something. How many people have been there? Don't lie. It's okay. For those of us that have had that feeling, that's because the moment your brain got clear, you knew exactly what you forgot. But while you're stressing, getting ready to leave, you're so muddled up, you weren't clear. So if you can get clear in your test, you'll think clearly during your test. And then the right side is if you're getting all wound up, you're feeling the stress. Eric, I don't know. I don't get there. I don't know how to do it. I don't get it. Breathe. Just like I've done a few times in this class. I get up here. I take a couple seconds. Bring myself back down. I don't care if you take yourself from a 9 to an 8. It's still better than staying at a 9. And I know people say, well, Eric, I'm running out of time. I don't to breathe. Yeah, you do. Because that 5 seconds you take to calm down will pay way more dividends than you rushing for the next 15 minutes to finish. Trust me. And just so we're clear, I've taught over 10,000 people in this class now. So I'm not saying I know what I'm talking about, but the numbers would lead me to believe that I kind of do a little bit. Let's talk about 3 more things before we're going to finish up. Caffeine is just like stress to the body. What happens when you drink coffee? Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, get a little jittery if there's too much, right? What happens when you get stressed? Heart rate goes up, adrenal glands kick in, blood pressure goes up, get a little jittery and too much stress. Yeah. So maybe when you're in your test, you should take 1 less coffee maybe. Not that you don't go cold turkey. That's going to do more damage than anything else. But maybe 1 less, right? I was at a haunted house last weekend. I'll tell you one thing. Out of everybody who's at the haunted house, people just don't go, fall asleep. Now, well, fainting's different. But like they don't get tired, yawn, and then fall asleep in the haunted house. Why? Because when you're stressed, you stay awake. You might not need the coffee to stay awake during your test. The second one is get good marks on your mock test before you take your certs. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. I hear this often. Eric, I got 60% on my mock, so I went and got not 60% on my cert. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. I'm like, well, why? I can get 60% on my mock. And I'm like, well, because you take the test a little bit more serious when you take it, which means you're stressed a little bit more, which means your mark goes down. So get a good mark on your mocks. Now, that is not me giving you permission to go get 100% on your mocks. No. 70, 75 should be enough. And then the last two things we're going to go through, because we're almost done, is don't expect to get 100%. Or understand 100% of what you read. Because they don't build it for... I'm going to say it really, really bluntly. This test is not made for you to pass. It's made for certain people to fail. Let me tell you what I mean. This test isn't made to make sure you're ridiculously intelligently smart to pass. This is so people that don't know what they're doing with people's finance don't pass. Do you get what I'm saying? This is so certain people don't pass so they don't deal with people's money. If you educate yourself well enough, you'll pass. It's just a matter of time. You just got to put in enough effort, put in enough time, and everybody can do it. I've met people that don't speak English, do speak English, older, younger, learning disabilities, no learning disabilities, kids, dogs, none. All of them pass. Please don't let the excuse be the reason. And the last thing is if you treat it like it's a game, you'll pass because you just got to get 18 questions out of 30 to get a 60. That means you can get 12 questions flat out wrong and still pass. I played soccer when I was growing up. Two things in soccer. I just score enough goals and not get goals scored on me. They could score 1,000 goals, but as long as I get 1,001, I win.